Hello, welcome to Discussing Tabletop. It is, of course, Saturday, March 31st, 2018. This is our 71st episode. For those of you out there joining us, welcome to the Tabletop Discussion Show, where we take a number of topics of the new releases in the tabletop world, from CCGs to RPGs, card games, board games, you name it, we talk about it. We discuss it for a little while here. Joining me today is, of course, my usual co-host, Joe. Our other usual co-host, Worm, is unfortunately unavailable yet again, so that's why we don't have him. But we have a special guest with us today, the Orcish Librarian. Once again, a friend and guest of the show to return to us.
I like to think of myself as an unusual guest.
That's acceptable. That's acceptable. So today we have a number of topics I want to talk about. First, I want to dive into Magic the Gathering. We've learned some things about mechanics from Dominaria. They've had a bunch of announcements. Just kind of go over some of that information about what's going on in the Magic the Gathering hemisphere. Then I want to talk about Wizkids games, because they are doing a Magic the Gathering board games, and they're making miniature versions of the tokens that Magic does a lot of, which I'm very interested as a big fan of tokens. I want to talk about Cold Dark, the RPG by Modiphius. I want to talk about Liberty After, another RPG. I want to talk about, today, we're going to talk about Wasteland Warfare from the Fallout universe versus Legacy Life Among the Ruins, both of which are post-apocalyptic RPGs by Modiphius. And both are out now. I don't know why they didn't space them out farther apart. I know. Steve Jackson Games had some announcements at Gama, which we'll look into that in a bit. Then we'll talk about Kung Fu Zoo by Wizkids. And if we have a little time left, we'll talk about Relative Insanity, the party game, before we move into our normal segments. That one's kind of was an extra from last week, so if we need to talk about it, we'll talk about it, but it's not as important as let's start with, of course, Magic. So yeah, card image gallery of Dominaria is out. We're getting some of the storyline things from Dominaria out. They have been putting out a bunch of announcements. They have a new logo, what the different things are coming out with, the promos. Of course, they've been talking about other things like the last duel. Is it maybe the last duel deck, Elves vs. Adventurers? I think they were talking about retiring.
That is the last duel deck, yes.
Yeah. So they were talking about that, which we can kind of dive into all this kind of stuff that's going on. There's a lot of stuff going on. Oh, and they showed off a whole bunch of stuff about the signature spellbook too. I mean, they've been talking about a whole lot of stuff over the past 2 weeks. Have either of you had a chance to look at least? Let's talk about the mechanics in Dominaria. Have either of you had a chance to look at those kind of things?
I've had a chance to look at the cards which have actually been officially released. There was a big leak that happened back near the start of the month, where official card text for a lot of the set came out, but I haven't actually looked at that, so I only know the ones that they've publicly put out so far.
Mm-hmm. I think the sagas are really weird.
I find
Explain how.
They last 3 turns. Each turn does something different. Normally, one is very detrimental to everyone.
I actually really, mechanic-wise, I guess I'm a little bit indifferent to the sagas. What I really like about them is I really like the look and kind of the flavor that those cards have.
I will go with that.
I know that so for people who haven't seen it, it's a different kind of card frame than they've used before, that has a very vertical orientation, where all the rules text is in a vertical column that runs down the left side, and the art is in a vertical column that runs down the right side of the card. And in the same way that anytime there's a new card frame that comes out, people have steaming hot takes about it. and I know that like they spoiled these, and some people were like, I really like the way it looks. Some people were like, I hate the way that it looks. I actually I'm in the camp where I really like the way that these cards look. And in particular, it's a shape for the art that we've never seen before on a card. This is very vertically focused aspect ratio, and you can tell that a lot of thought put into when they were assigning these pieces to the artists, that the art directors and the artists really worked together to figure out what can we do with this kind of unique shape of real estate that we can't do on other kinds of cards. And so you look at like the piece that Noah Bradley did. That looks like a tall stained glass window, and it's absolutely beautiful. You look at the piece that James Arnold did that just came out this week that has this mixed media with all these mathematical equations and references to pieces from Magic lore, and it's completely different from the Noah Bradley piece, and it's beautiful. Or you look at the very first one that came out, which is the Phyrexian one that shows like the sacrificial altar, and you can see the blood dripping all the way down that takes advantage of that vertical space. And so I really like the. Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, and you can see like the little writings of like because it's supposed to be like the scriptures that are like being filled with the blood. Yeah.
Yeah, and I really like the way that they've that obviously there's a gameplay purpose for doing the frame differently, where because of the way the mechanic works, you have that turn-to-turn progression, and so it kind of leads your eye down the panel, and you see what you do on turn 1, turn 2, turn 3. But I love that they've taken the opportunity to use that space to put some really different kind of art style in there, and also that these are the sagas are explicitly calling back to like cool parts from Magic lore in the past. So you have the saga about Gerard's Gerard. You have the saga about the fall of Benala. You have the saga about the fall of the Thran. You have the saga about searching for the Mirari. Yeah, the Ice Age, searching for the Mirari. So I really love the way that they've kind of brought everything together.
And I think it's interesting because, like, I was reading up a little bit out. They were saying, like, they aimed for this art on these things to, like, represent what people would think and represent in, like, the, in quotations, modern Dominaria when looking back at these past events. Like, for, like, for when it's Shiv and it's, like, the first eruption, like, it's showing, like, this would be a banner someone would have representing the history of Shiv on it, kind of thing.
Which, by the way, I need to jump in on that one for a second because Steve Belladin, who is a fantastic artist who works in traditional media, did the painting for that card, and it is an oil painting that absolutely looks like it's a knitted tapestry. And Steve Belladin on his blog has a great post where he talks about the process of making this piece and just all the little fine detail that went into it. And when you see it, it really does look like it's a textile. And so all the fine detail that went into recreating that effect. And that painting is actually on eBay right now, I believe, for anybody out there who wants to own something super, super cool and has a couple grand burning a hole in their back pocket. This would be a good thing to do with it.
So, what do you? Oh, you can say something, Joe. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I agree. The artwork and the style, I have no problem with. They look awesome. It's just a really odd mechanic to me.
Yeah, I mean, I feel it's like they have had similar mechanics, but nothing quite that has hit the nail on the head of like you get something over 3 turns. So it's a setup.
The cards it reminds me of in a weird sort of way are, it's almost like a very reinterpreted version of cumulative upkeep. It's almost like a cumulative upkeep effect, but with a natural limit built into it where it's only good for 3 turns. And the other cards it reminds me of a lot are the ordeals in Theros, which were the creature enchantments, where you tried to build up counters on them, and then once you got the 3rd counter or whatever, you sacrificed it, got an effect. So to me, it's almost like it's a weird like hybrid of the ordeals from Theros and like a cumulative upkeep effect.
Mm-hmm. I'd almost add a third thing. It also slightly reminds me of the plane shift cards.
Yeah,
but like a limited time. Like, hey, you're kind of you're in this area for a limited time, and you're getting these bonuses.
Yeah.
Or negatives.
Because it seems like each of them is very different too. Like like the red ones definitely usually have that kind of like. Many of them also have that kind of like trade-off. Same with like black and stuff. But like the white ones are all pure like here's a bunch of bonuses. Yeah. Now, how about historic? Which is a very interesting one. It's a word referring to sagas, legendaries, and artifacts.
It's one where it's like I have a hard time figuring out what I even do or don't think about it yet, just because it's clearly an enabler for something, but we haven't really yet seen the things that you're going to get paid off for. There's like in terms of at least the cards that have been officially spoiled, I think there's like one maybe I can think of that has a payoff or for having historic stuff. So it's so weird because you're kind of trying to evaluate it in isolation right now, and I'm honestly not sure what I think about it yet.
Yeah. Now, of course, Kicker's back. I'm always glad about Kicker. I like it.
That's a classic. The introduction of legendary sorceries now.
Which they actually play it in a very interesting ability, where they say you have to have a legendary, like, permanent, and then you can cast any number of legendary sorceries. And you can cast the same one. It's just, rather than the sorcery itself being legendary, you need something legendary in order to use it.
Right.
Which I kind of find that interesting mechanic.
I mean, it's part of a larger focus for the set too, which is that legendary matters. So I mean, you have legendary sorceries, you have all kinds of legendary creatures. Apparently, there's a whole new card frame for legendary. Apparently, every pack will have at least one legendary card in it. And like I'm not the world's greatest Magic player, so I'm not like I don't feel educated enough or prepared enough to comment on how this is actually going to play out. Like if you're drafting or you're doing sealed deck, how is this environment going to play with all these legendaries in it? But I like the fact I think one of the problems they were always going to have going back to Dominaria is that there's so much history there. There's so many characters there that have been pre-established. Like you already can't call, like one of the things about going back to that setting is you already don't have the space to call back to all the things that people care about, all the characters that people care about. Let alone if you want to have a narrow enough focus to tell a coherent story, even if you're just like, screw it, we're just going to name drop everything. You can't possibly hit everything. And then let alone if you want to introduce new characters and new settings and things. And I feel like the fact that they kind of embraced like, okay, we're just going to load up on legendary effects in this set made it possible to include more of that stuff.
Yeah.
That it's not like, oh, we already have 10 legendary creatures, so we can't put Joyra in, or we can't put Joda in, or we can't put, another character in. That they kind of took what I think could have been a problem and leaned into it in a way that I'm hoping is going to be fun to play with, and certainly means that they can put more of the people in places that I think people want to see in the set than they would otherwise.
And I'm also thinking that, like, what I've seen, because they came out with, I think it was like, they've already come out with 3 of the story bits for Dominaria, and it has only been like 2 weeks or 1 week and a half or something. They're throwing them out very quickly, and I get the feeling there's going to be a lot of them. And I read through them. I get the feeling that maybe that's some of the place that they're going to fill in some of those gaps about like what's going on that they can't do with all the cards. Like they mentioned Joda, and like he's doing something over there, and like they might not have a card for him, but we still know he's out there doing crap because he's immortal.
And I think they said that it's going to be 12 stories for the set, which is twice as many as we usually get. And of course, that's tied into the fact that Martha Wells, who's not one of the usual Wizards writers, but is a really respected writer, came in and has guest written all the story pieces for this set. And the ones that have come out so far, I think they're great. I'm really enjoying them, and I think that it's great that because they added more creative talent for the purpose of doing this set, that it means we get more story. And it means that the people at Wizards who were writing the story previously, people like Allison Lurs and Kelly Diggs, who are on the creative team and were also writing all the Magic stories, had the opportunity to do more of that creative work. And so it also means that you have more creative energy that went into the set.
Yeah.
But having said that, one thing that I see online all the time and that drives me nuts, and I have to talk about it for a second, is people being like, oh, yay, hooray, we have a professional writer working on the Magic story now. And every time I read that, it makes my head want to explode because people like, again, like Alison Lurs and Kelly Diggs and all the people who were writing the story previously, they're also professional writers, and they're also really, really good writers. And one of my little, like, from a work balance perspective, it's clearly good that they have added more people to creative, because you got the sense, at least from the outside looking in, that there were not nearly enough people in creative trying to handle all the things that needed to be done.
Yeah.
But it drives me nuts every time someone's like, oh, yay, they got real writers for a change. Like, the people who were doing the story previously are real writers, professional writers, and the story for, like, Ixalan and Amonkhet and all the recent blocks is some of the best that it's ever been. So it's not like they're there are a bunch of hacks who are working on this previously. The people who are working on this previously were doing some of the best work that's ever been done by the story team. And so I am sad to see them go. I'm happy that they get to focus on other things. I'm happy that we get more story, but the kind of like reaction that you see online from people like, oh, finally they have real writers. It just every time I see it, I want to. So.
Well, harkening back to the last mechanic, though, I want to talk about hexproof from, because I mean,
it's protection from color.
Yeah, it really is.
They brought back protection from color. They just updated the terminology to go with the new term hexproof.
Because it's not quite the same as protection. It's like protection light, I'd call it.
Yeah.
Which, why didn't we just keep protection? Is that something that we just... I didn't think we got rid of that. I don't remember getting rid of that, or unless it's just been phased out and I just haven't noticed it.
They haven't used it in a long time.
Protection they phased out back around Magic Origins. Origins was, I think, the last set, at least the last like standard legal set that had a protection card in it. It just had Goblin Pile Driver. It just had the one. And my understanding is that essentially there's the concern about protection is twofold. One is that from a rules perspective, it caused a lot of confusion. And I confess I've never experienced that in the games that I've been playing, but I'm also not a Friday Night Magic judge.
Yeah.
So I don't like, I'm not on the ground floor, I'm not on the firing line for this. And apparently my understanding is that especially at like tournaments and events, protection caused problems where people weren't clear on how it worked. And then the other thing I think is the component of protection, which is that you couldn't block. Which hexproof from color doesn't come with.
Yeah.
And I think that there was part of the concern about protection was that you could just, especially in limited environments or like after sideboarding, that it just became like you could just get rolled.
Yeah.
By a protection creature. If you're like, if you're in draft and you're mono black and you happen to run into like the 2 white knight deck, like you just get rolled over and there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah. So I can see why they kind of phased it out. But it's also like, as someone that definitely doesn't worry a lot about that type, I'm like, I liked it. I didn't play that kind of Magic, I wasn't Friday night. I'm not drafting, so I don't know.
Yeah, and we didn't really play with sideboarding either.
Yeah. But there is a lot of that in Magic, so I can understand why they did it, and that makes sense when we talk about it like that.
Yeah, as far as confusing, I don't understand how it could be confusing. That color can't hurt you.
Yeah.
Or whatever's enchanted from that. That color can't hurt that card.
I think it was just the amount of things that it covered. Can't block, damage is reduced to 0, can't be targeted. Whereas this is a little cleaner.
Yeah.
Cleaner is the wrong word. This covers less ground.
Right. No, I got what you meant.
It just can't be targeted.
Yeah.
So, moving on though for a little bit more of Magic before we finish it up. Have either of you had a chance to the dual decks? I mean, that's the last one. It's more elves because we need more elves. Because they haven't had a billion elf decks anyway.
Everybody needs more elves, okay?
That's the only thing I have to say about it. It had to be elves? It's elves versus goblins, except because there's a goblin in there, but it's like they made it inventors instead of goblins. Anyway. How about the signature spellbook? Have either of you taken a look at... They spoiled all the... Apparently it's only, what, like 7 cards? Or 8 cards. 8 cards.
And a foil, I think, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's got an interesting look to it. It's kind of neat. But it's also like, how much are you charging for this?
I don't remember what the price point is, but I remember it's definitely lower than like the From the Vaults were. I think it was only like 20. I think it was like $19.99 or $29.99.
Okay, so
I can't remember what it was.
That's a lot better than the From the Vaults. The From the Vaults were always like ridiculously expensive in my book, so I was like, that's just. No. I managed to get one of them, and then the rest like bumped up in price to like no end, and I'm like, I'm done with them.
Signature spellbook's only $19.99.
That's okay for like really fancy cards, 8 of them, and a little thick fancy thing.
Yeah, and it's I mean the things I like about it, it's got new there's cards with new art. The cards all have new frames again. Which sort of continues the trend we're seeing where they're doing a lot more like slightly differentiated frame design. So you get new art with Jace in it, if that's your thing. If you like Jace, you get new frames. I like it. I mean, this one's not for me because it doesn't go any decks I have, and I'm not the world's biggest Jace fan.
Yeah.
But I like. It makes sense to me as a product where it is tightly themed. It's themed around a character. Like if you have an EDH deck or something that plays with Jace, you probably want all of the cards in this.
Yeah.
As opposed to things like From the Vault where, you probably didn't want all 15 cards that came in that box. Like you maybe wanted like 2 or 3 of the angels, or you maybe wanted 2 or 3 of the dragons, or you maybe wanted 2 or 3 of the artifacts. Mm-hmm. As opposed to like here, if you have a Jace deck, you probably want all the cards that come in this deck, and even if you already have them, you maybe want them for the new art or the new frame, and it's at a lower price point as opposed to From the Vault, which kind of felt like it was super expensive. It was hard to find. It was kind of a crapshoot on whether you were actually going to get value from it or not, which is always a risk whenever they do the high price point products, because if it turns out to not have value, people get really salty about it. Versus here, I can imagine that you want every one of the cards. You either want all the cards in it or you don't, in which case you're just not going to buy it. So,
like for me, because I like collecting Magic cards too, I like this product because I'm like, I could get this. Like the From the Vaults, I got the one because it was I think it was the Annihilation, and it was not as popular as the other ones, so it never bumped up in price very heavily. But like all the others, by the time you're like looking for them, they're either like all like someone pre-ordered all of them that a store is going to get, or it's already jumped up in price $1 billion, and I'm like, nah, that's the only one I ever got of the From the Vault series because it didn't jump up in price, and that's the only reason. And I got lucky and I found a place that had it. After that, it was just like, so.
And I think it's kind of symptomatic with like any of the Magic products that come out like at that super elevated price point. They either hit or they miss, and they either hit really hard or they miss really hard in terms of value. Like you almost, if for a Magic product that's like priced at $100, like it's almost guaranteed you're not getting $100 worth of resale value.
No.
Like you're going to either end up with 40 or 200, and it's kind of a crapshoot to know which one it is. And it just creates like feel bad situations where it's either you wanted it but you couldn't get it because it turns out that it's a super high value product, and it like the few that the store gets like go immediately and you can't find them, or it turns out that it's super overcosted and nobody wants it. Like those mistakes don't happen at a $20 price point.
So, do you have anything to add with this one, Joe?
No, just agreeing.
Okay. So I do want to move a little bit on because we are going to still talk about Magic for a minute, but I want to talk about what Wizkids is doing because they're working with Wizards to do 2 things. Now, first off, Magic the Gathering board game. Cool. I mean, I have looked at Explorers of Ixalan. That's the board game kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
That looks cool. I haven't gotten it, but it looks interesting. Have you had a chance to play it at all at Orcish Librarian?
No, I haven't.
See, none of us have. I've looked over.
Yeah, I've seen it in store and looked at it, and that's about it.
And it looks very cool, and I think we talked about it before. So if it's something similar, because they're taking on, I think they're calling it Heroes of Dominaria.
Yeah.
Cool. The big thing I like about what they're talking about this year is the Creature Forge Overwhelming Swarm. They're doing 28 tokens in miniature form. I'm a token fan.
That.
Yeah. I want to pull out, instead of token cards, little miniatures, and with a token card of ha-ha! Angel token!
And the tokens look pretty damn good.
Yeah. We haven't seen all of them, but they're saying
No, they had 2 of them on the Wizkids site, and the angel looks amazing.
Yeah. Because the only ones they mentioned they're doing are angel, zombie, goblins, dragons, dinosaurs, and then bears. Because bears!
But what about zoblins?
No zoblins. Unfortunately, there never was a token for them. It always just happened.
And I think that's significant about this too, even independent of the Dominaria board game or the miniature tokens or the Ixalan board game, is that also what this represents is really, I think you're seeing Wizards kind of dipping, not more than just dipping a toe into the idea that this is a franchise, that they're going to use that brand for other products.
Yeah.
Which, and who knows, that could turn out really great or it could turn out really bad. But for some reason, for a brand that was as big as this is and has as much IP as this brand has and has as many recognizable characters and images as this brand has, and for a company that's owned by Hasbro that does literally nothing but make as many different versions of their things as is humanly possible, it's been kind of strange to see how slowly Magic has moved in this direction. That even up until a couple of years ago, it was they made Magic cards, and then there's a couple of Funko Pops and a couple of T-shirts, and that was kind of it for branded merchandise. And I think clearly what we're seeing now is that they've made a decision that they're going to move more aggressively into this space, and you're going to see more Magic branded products that aren't just Magic cards, and it will be interesting to see how that plays out.
Mm-hmm. I'm definitely interested to see a lot of what this direction goes into, because there's certain things that I would love to see in product form. As a big fan of also role-playing games, they have the plane shift stuff.
Yeah.
They give it out for free, which is great. I would buy a big, core plane shift book if it would be here's how to integrate some of Magic systems into your own D&D world, own unique systems of, how Magic uses its own magic, incorporating it into D&D or something, Something like that would be awesome. I would buy it. I'm sure there's a lot of people that would be oh, cool. You've taken this, to the next level of, Magic the role-playing game,
Yeah. Or also one I forgot earlier, too, they've started doing the art books now too, which is great.
Yeah.
And right now, the art books have all been closely tied to the new set releases. It's okay, we get a Dominaria set, so we get a Dominaria art book. We get an Ixalan set, so we get an Ixalan art book. I would love to see them continue to do more things in that space too. We could have a Chandra art book. We could have a Jace art book. Again, I'm not the world's biggest Jace fan, but I would probably buy the Jace art book. I would buy the Chandra art book. I would buy, again, those kinds of things. So.
Yeah. So definitely, it's interesting to see how Magic's direction is going to be going for their extended products, but at least they're continuing the more recent traditions, at least over the past year, that as we've on the show's been talking about it, they've at least been relatively positive trends, in the Magic world. And so, hey, keep it up, Wizards.
I think that, not to pretend that there aren't issues right now with things the cadence of the cadence of the release of products, the health of certain of some of the formats, but I think that, for the stuff that primarily interests me, which is the art and the flavor, I think the game right now is the best that it's ever been. I think the art right now is the best that it's ever been. I think the flavor and the storytelling is the best that it's ever been, which doesn't mean that I'm not nostalgic for things that happened in the past. I'm as nostalgic as the next orc for all kinds of things that I remember and love. But it's just like there's always such a curmudgeon-y community online where anything new they hate, and it's like and you'll see it like I'm amazed at like how well the Dominaria reception has gone. I figured that you were going to have everybody coming out of the woodwork like, that's not exactly how I remember it, and I don't like it. But I just like the quality of the creative work right now is super, super high, and it's so much fun to watch. I'm having such a great time with this spoiler season. I love every time like a new card comes out. I love the art. I love the characters. I love the names and the flavor. I think it's the best it's ever been right now.
Yep. All right. Why don't we move on? Of course, because there's a couple more things I do want to talk about other than just Magic today. Even though we have hit a bunch of that. Why don't we talk about some of the role-playing game news I wanted to talk about? Let's hit Modiphius stuff first, because Modiphius, now, the first one I did want to talk about, which was one from last week, is Cold and Dark Better Worlds. It's a horror sci-fi game. So that's cool. We don't get a lot of horror-type RPGs. I think it's a little difficult to do, like, a straight horror. You can usually, like...
Oh, pardon me.
It's okay. You can usually integrate horror into a game, but actually getting it straight in there, a little difficult. Like being aiming on it. And it's there's a planet and that was terraformed. It's been populated, and you know, bad things are kind of happening in the area. So hey, it's kind of simple like that. You know, so we have sci-fi, exploring universe, horror, interesting kind of things. I'm glad that we're taking a game in this direction, is my basic take on this, that they're aiming for more horror-based things. Joe, what do you think about more like a horror-based RPG, if they're doing, especially this is like a sci-fi horror? So like what, Aliens, Predators, except futuristic, you know?
Yeah, well, Aliens, Predators are still slightly, well, Aliens are slightly futuristic.
True.
But I mean, I'd try it. It's hard to do a horror game and really feel like, you know,
yeah,
that tension.
Yeah.
You really have to have a GM who's good at making you feel, you know, that area. You know, like really bring you into that world.
Now, granted, if they give some great tools in the book that make it easier, you might not need that super great GM. You might just need an okay GM. But I do feel like you still need a little bit of skill. It's getting horror is not a beginner thing, unfortunately.
No.
Not unless you're really, really good, like a natural, or you stumble on something. You can get lucky, too. Like, the right story will do it for you. But, yeah.
Like, I would like to see it with something like this, them come out with maybe some audio files and can go with it. Things more to set the mood.
Yeah.
For a game like this, I think that's almost a necessity to really draw you in.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
Speaking admittedly from my very limited, very, very limited experience, I think to me, those are the settings and the kind of styles that I feel like work better as one-shots than they do as like extended campaigns.
Yeah. Because
it's like, if you're trying to do something that's all about tension or shock or horror value or surprise value, you can kind of like craft an experience that's 2 hours long that I think works really well for that. I think it's probably harder to sustain that in a meaningful way over multiple sessions where you're paying things off as you go, but also maintaining something that people are working towards.
I feel like maybe like mini stories might work too. Maybe a couple of sessions, but the way that you'd have to do a couple sessions would be very difficult because it's usually like traditionally most role-playing sessions a week apart. You have a week to digest what you did. Yeah. Like a cliffhanger is one thing, but a cliffhanger is not like the kind of tension you're aiming for in a horror game. Cliffhanger is like that excitement, like, oh, we ended at a point in time that you're anticipating that. That's not the type of tension I'm aiming for by, like, ending the session here. So it's almost as if, yeah, you're right. You have to either have the entire story self-contained or somehow end whatever horror is there and have a new horror the next week. And that's...
And also even just in the mechanics of, like, what are the horror tropes that you see all the time? It's like, oh, everybody splits up and they go in different directions and they get picked off one by one. Or, there's a lot of hidden information, like certain people discover things that other people don't know about yet. And I think those are some of the things that can be kind of hard to incorporate into a game, because it means that, like, if people split up, you have long periods where somebody's not doing anything. They're just sitting there waiting for their turn, but they're also listening to, like, all the spooky stuff that's happening to everybody else, and it kind of kills the mood.
Yeah.
Or you're constantly, like, taking people out of the room to give them, okay, here's the secret that you've discovered, and then it means there's 5 other people sitting around,
But with that now, with technology, you could text the secret to the person.
That's true.
So you're not taking them out of the room. You could have a bunch of texts already lined up, and it's like, oh, you're gonna boom, to send the information. So there's ways around that now. I think one trope you could easily do with a horror game, though, is have someone set up as a betrayer in the party.
Yeah. And I think, like, at least atmospherically, you could probably do atmospheric horror, which is not as powerful, like a dreadful world. But if you pull it off right, it will work.
Right, and that's why I said, comes in, like, having audio files of sounds and, things that would make that world feel more like you're actually sitting in it.
It comes with an actual monster closet.
Strange alien life pods, that you could just, like, leave down. It's like, just don't look inside it. Trust me. I'm just going to leave this right here. You can all stare at it. Just don't open it up. So yeah, I mean, it's an interesting game that they're working on and expanding upon. So I definitely am glad that they're supporting it and pushing out more products for it, and I'd like to see more. But again, it's another one of those ones that we should probably try the quick start rule sometimes and see if it actually works. Anyway, now, the other thing that Modifius did this last week that I really want to kind of complain about is they came out with, count them, two survival kind of post-apocalyptic RPGs. One of them is Legacy Life Among the Ruins. They came out with their sort of, like, second edition kind of thing on that, which is cool. Okay. Great for them. The other thing is Fallout. They put out a Fallout RPG. And I'm really interested to say, what's the difference? Like, okay, yeah, granted, Fallout probably has much more of that 1950s kind of feel to it and then goes apocalyptic. And this one might just be more modern day, slightly futuristic, then goes apocalyptic. But on the core, they're still both apocalyptic worlds rebuilding. So, I mean, and they're both very close apart. In the same month, we have Legacy 2nd Edition and the Fallout one, kind of a bunch of stuff on it. Fallout Wasteland Warfares. The campaign book came out with the 2.0. I mean, if it was like an expansion to Fallout, I would complain less. But it's the campaign book.
If it's like any project I've ever worked on, then what happened was that they were supposed to be released 8 months apart, and one of them ran 8 months behind.
Yeah.
And they're like, we could hold it, but we're going to lose the license. It's got to come out now.
Yeah. Granted.
Yeah, I mean, they have...
Okay.
I'm assuming they have different feels, though, to them.
Okay, Wasteland Warfare is a little different because it's more like Mech Warrior, if you're familiar with that.
Right.
It's a miniatures-based, more role-playing kind of campaign thing.
Okay. Yeah, I see what you're saying. I'm looking at the...
Yeah, I'm reading up on it a little bit now. They have like a bunch of books about like campaigning and stuff, and they have a lot of miniature pieces you can purchase for it. Because of course, all miniature games like Mech Warrior, they get the money from the miniatures.
Right.
Okay, so Wasteland Warfare is less role-playing game, more miniatures game. So, okay.
Yeah.
But still, when you have a campaign, you're still getting into an essence. I don't know. It's...
Yeah, but they're aimed at different people, really, because not all people who do role-playing are going to do the miniature stuff, and a lot of people who do the miniature stuff aren't doing the role-playing.
So, I mean, if you want to do some more pure Fallout, I guess you do more of the miniatures thing, which is a lot less role-playing, and more role-playing, you do Legacy. Yeah. I guess that's fine. I don't know. It's just that, you know, Modiphius, sometimes I wonder about them, because also it's like, it's the same thing.
Hey, they still haven't told us how to actually pronounce that.
Yeah. Well, it's like that they have like a billion sci-fi different themed RPGs, it seems like nowadays, and they feel very close sometimes. You know? Like we're talking about Cold and Dark, and I could pick out another one of their sci-fi RPGs that seems similar but is still different. Someone's revving an engine near me.
Maybe they're getting ready to go into the Wasteland.
To the Wasteland. I don't know. I just want to complain about Modiphius for a minute. You know? That they're just... We can only do so many post-apocalyptic and sci-fi things. We need something a little different, Modiphius. Please. Please. Just... I don't know what they can do. They come out with like a... They come out with a lot of RPG systems. I think that's the thing. Every time I stop talking, they start revving. Or every time, yeah.
Yeah, every time you start talking, they start revving.
Yes. It's 25 miles per hour speed limit out there. What are they revving up for? Sorry. Real word distraction. They have a lot of products, RPG products, for a lot of different things. It's like, I feel like maybe they diversifying too much now. I think that was my complaint about Modiphius. Too many RPGs. It's too little time. Is there such a thing as that? I don't know. Maybe there is. I mean, could we focus? I don't know. I lost where I was talking about, complaining about them.
Basically, they're similar but different enough that I think it works.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that they're doing that's... I guess that's what it is a lot of the stuff they do is similar, but probably different enough that it works between the different things they're working on. So, hopefully that's the best way to describe it. I'm moving on.
Are we continuing with Wizkids?
We could continue with Wizkids.
You have another one.
I do have another one, but it's like board game, and I wanted to kind of throw all the RPGs together before we talked about. Kinda.
Is there anything else other than Liberty?
Yeah, Liberty After.
Right, okay. We slightly touched base on that, but not much.
Yeah, Liberty After. It's a sci-fi RPG, and this one's at least a little different because it's using 5th ed rules, so it's using D&D tweaked a little bit, and it's about a world where there's like 2 societies. There's an oppressed sort of like city-based society where there's like a oppressive government and stuff, and the other is like a post-apocalyptic like kind of wasteland kind of area outside of it. So it's sort of like you've got the oppressive government area, which is more like civilization, what's left of it, and then you have like the overrun apocalyptic area all around it. And I think that is an interesting juxtaposition, that it's like you could either place your games in either or work with the interactions between these two. That would be fun. You know, basically two worlds at odds, they call it, you know. Your military state kind of, you know, dictatorship kind of horrible place like that, and you're like, you know, post-apocalyptic gang battles. I don't know if it's like Mad Max biker gang battles or just like, Fallout, gangs in the Wasteland, battles. Not sure which it is.
Could be a combination.
It would be funny, but also I could expect a combination. Yeah. So it's interesting. It's different. The PDF's only $15. That's not a bad price for a PDF of this type.
No.
So, I don't know if either of you have anything to say about it, but that's what I had to say about it. It's interesting. I kind of feel like I would love to test it out. They don't have a playtest thing, so it might be have to something. But $15 isn't bad for a core book.
No.
It's just that, running it, question mark? Not sure how successful I would be on this one without, would you need some help? I don't know. Maybe.
Mental or physical?
Both. Both at this point in time. Cool. Let's talk about Kung Fu Zoo. Okay, go ahead. Wizkids. Have you taken a look at it then, Joe?
A little bit. It makes me think of Kung Fu Panda, but with other animals.
All right. That's a fine way of talking about it. Okay. So, talking about a board game / I guess it's more of a board game. So this is like a zoo after closing time. It's a dice flicking dexterity game. So already it's like interesting, but not quite in my wheelhouse because dexterity games also always kind of like, I never have a good place to actually play them. Not that I wouldn't want to, it's just never a good place to. 2 to 4 players.
You don't like chasing pieces under tables?
The majority...
Well, we normally play at diners.
Yeah. We normally play board games at diners.
And we have one game that you have to flick a token with, and how many times did it end up in someone's drink?
Once in a drink, a lot of times on the floor. And then you had to go rooting around. Unfortunately, no one else was near us because a couple of times it would have disturbed other people. If they were around. So 2 to 4 players, where you have a team of highly trained animals. Apparently, your animals are also kung fu masters, and you have to kung fu battle your rivals.
I want to know how a zebra learned kung fu.
I don't know. Zebra kung fu, or cheetahs, elephants, and gorillas. Like the gorilla, I'll give you. The gorilla
makes the most sense.
It's got hands. It can stand around and do kung fu. But like a cheetah, what's it gonna do? Get up on its back paws? Meow. Meow, 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 meow.
Well, instead of hidden dragon, it could do hidden cat.
So apparently you get animal sheets and 16 dice. And apparently, the only 4 creatures are elephants, cheetahs, gorillas, and zebras that each learn kung fu. So
I want a mongoose.
I mean, that's scientifically accurate, I think. So, sure.
Uh-huh.
Those are the only animals that do kung fu. It checks out.
Okay, and there's 2 types to play. You can do cage battles or point battles.
Ooh.
And actually, it shows the cheetahs standing up and kicking someone.
I know, it's so silly.
And the only one who could actually stand is jumping in the air.
Yes. The rest of them, they have them standing and doing stuff.
I don't know what the elephant's doing.
It's like going down on that, like crouching, like it's like leaping over something, like all like,
I know, but it looks
style.
really ridiculous.
They all look ridiculous. Even the gorilla, which is just jumping in the air, it looks ridiculous.
Yeah, you think at least with that one, you would have him standing in a kung fu stance? No, the obvious kung fu one, stance one is jumping.
Yeah.
And, oh my god, on the points ones, there's one die for the gorilla that is his butt. It is.
Oh god, it is.
Because the elephant, the cheetah, and the zebra also have, butt picks, but theirs are more of a tail, where the gorilla looks like a pair of the buttocks.
Yeah. What it's like going butt first into someone. Butt attack. I mean, at least the rest of them, you're like excusing as like, oh, it's like you're attacking this way or something, but
Nope, gorilla, you get butt attack.
Again, I mean, scientifically accurate. So,
science. It's fun.
Everybody loves Kung Fu Butting.
Thank you for that one. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyway,
I appreciate it.
Yeah, Kung Fu Zoo. It's
weird.
It's weird. Yeah.
And you actually use the bottom part of the box to play in.
Yeah, that's interesting too. That like kind of makes the arena then.
Yeah.
That like you sort of pull out the top of the box and there's your arena. That's actually kind of cool about it. That it actually is practical. Like that it gives it that you could do a 3D board without having to like actually go like crazy.
I'm wondering, are you trying to flick the dice in the different holes?
I think you are. Let me check the rules if it'll download in like 3 seconds. Because you can. Because fortunately, Wizkids is nice to us, and it's 2 pages. It's really 2 pages of rules.
Oh no!
This is very simple. I don't have a complaint. It's just like, okay, you just needed 2 pages, apparently. Good for them. Kept it simple. Just one of those things. They're not loading up very well for me.
I got him loaded.
Fine. Well, what is it?
Now. Well, there's cage battle and points battle. How to play a 2-player game. Select an animal team and place the 4 corresponding dice in front of you. These are your starting animals. Choose and go first, and choose who will go first in battle. Place the starting animal at the midpoint of any rail and flick it into the arena. Player 2, starting animal. Place a starting animal at the midpoint and flick it into the arena. Place alternative players alternate turns. All starting animals have entered the arena. Thereafter, players continue play using animals from left arena to right.
You're flicking dice.
Yeah.
You're flicking dice. Okay. So it is like definitely like just a flicking.
Face-up animals can be flicked from anywhere on a rail. Feet-up animals are stunned and cannot be flicked.
All right.
Winning. Play continues until one player wins the round. When you win a round when your opponent's animals are all stunned, feet up, or caged. This player to win all 3 rounds and wins the cage battle. So basically, the cage is the holes.
Okay.
So if you flick someone into a hole, they're caged. If you flick the die and they land and the die turns feet up, they're stunned.
All right. Interesting.
Oh, and every animal has a special ability. They can be used once per round during a cage battle. Consult the cage battle reference cards, blah, blah, blah.
Interesting.
We stopped talking about butts, and I just kind of trailed off.
We kind of went into the rules there. It was like, okay, I've had enough of this one. It's interesting little game. It's dexterity based. If people want to check it out, go ahead. Kung Fu Zoo. It has a gorilla butt. If you really want a gorilla butt.
Sold.
Sold.
Everyone has a gorilla butt.
All right. Let's talk about Steve Jackson Games, and they've announced things at Gama.
Any radiation?
Maybe.
I get it.
Yeah. I mean, of course, they've continued to announce things, like they actually announced a new Munchkin expansion for the original Munchkin, Foul Play. Munchkin side quests they've announced. The big thing that I think I want to talk about is they're continuing the strange crossover with other products. Because they announced Munchkin Red Dragon Inn. Because you want...
That's needed.
Yeah.
Isn't their business model at this point to just make a Munchkin version of everything? Like,
It really is.
How far away are we from like Munchkin Pride and Prejudice, Munchkin 116th Congress, Munchkin
Well, it's like
IKEA store,
Munchkin IKEA.
They've begun their strange invasion of other board and card games. Is the weird thing.
I'm surprised they haven't done a version of Munchkin yet that you play as the monsters.
They probably did something. I don't know. Yeah. Well, I mean, they've done close, but not quite there. They did their, like, vampire werewolf kind of set.
Right, but I'm saying you actually, like, play as, like, the gazebo.
Yeah. I don't know. But this is their entire continuing campaign of invading other board games. So it's now you can have, like, the two iconic, like, Munchkin characters from the original set. Like, you can have versions of them for Red Dragon Inn that you can use. Like, some new patrons to the tavern. Cool. But it's still just more Munchkin.
Yeah.
Now,
that's their bread and butter.
The thing is that now, like, this is done by Slugfest Games, but they put it up on Kickstarter, which, like, I've given my complaints about Munchkin up on Kickstarter in general because it's such a huge brand, but this is like, they announced it at Gama, and then they threw it up on Kickstarter, or that they talked about it at Gama to, like, give, like, I guess, press. I mean, it's been up on Kickstarter, and it has been funded, but it's a Munchkin product. Even if it's another board game spliced with Munchkin, it's still a Munchkin product. It's going to sell.
Yes.
They make a lot of money. Why?
The answer to every question is because we can.
Yeah.
It's true.
Because they are powerful and can do whatever they want.
Because their scientists were so busy trying to figure out whether or not they could that they didn't stop to think if they should.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'll give Slugfest Games the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they were worried that, like, their fans wouldn't like them being spliced with Munchkin or something. Are Red Dragon Inn fans so different from Munchkin fans? I don't know. I don't think they are. But
no.
Whatever.
I'll wait for IKEA store Munchkin. So.
Oh my God! You say that, and then they're gonna do something with that. They're madmen. Those Munchkin folks. They are going to apparently release a 2018 version of the Illuminati game. I remember hearing about the Illuminati game because they put a classic edition out in '98. I never saw the 82 version. But apparently they're doing another one. Because, okay, cool. Good for Steve Jackson Games. I don't know. I question a lot of what they do lately, but Steve Jackson Games. Let's move on from them. They hurt my brain sometimes. Do I want to talk about anything else other than that? Do I actually want to talk about Relative Insanity? Not really. It was an extra thing on there. If you guys like Jeff Foxworthy, he has a card game based upon his jokes. Relative Insanity.
Yes.
I mean, I have no insult to him. I am not a fan of his, though. So, it was the closest thing to interesting last week. We had more topics this week. We don't need closest thing to interesting to fill out the show.
I'll wait for the Munchkin version.
I'll wait for the Munchkin.
Go give it a decade. They'll start doing, like, such stupid Munchkins, I'm sure.
I mean, from what I read on it, it seems like another one of those card games, like Super Fight or any of them that, you're adding some kind of words into a saying and then voting on it.
Okay.
So it's not bad. It's just another one of many.
It is another one of many, and more than likely, being a fan of Jeff Foxworthy probably would help with some of the humor. If it's not your kind of humor, or you just, then it might not be for you.
I mean, listen, if you have a relative who is into card games and the world's biggest Jeff Foxworthy fan, then at least your Christmas gifting just got super easy for the year.
Yes.
So that's a good thing then.
Yes. Even if he relatively likes party games, as long as it's Jeff Foxworthy fan, you winner. There we go. So for those of you out there looking for gifts for people that love Jeff Foxworthy, we got you, fam.
Oh my god, there's 400 punchline cards and 100 setup cards. I wonder if any of the setup cards is you might be a redneck.
It's actually probably the next Munchkin is Redneck Munchkin.
Oh my god, yes. Oh,
God. They do have the one redneck tree, don't they?
They did. They had a redneck tree, which I think orcs had an advantage against. So that tells you something.
Well, that was relatively insane.
Yes. It's been a day. It's been a day. All right. Okay. Let's move on to our, I guess, regular segments, because I think we covered all the major topics that I had.
Yeah.
We have. So, Kickstarter Korner. My normal segment of everybody can bring a Kickstarter to the table, kind of if they want to suggest something or something else that they want to support as such. God, I put normal segments in the thing here. Joe, do you have one?
Yes, I found one that's relatively new. Give me a second, I'm getting the link. And paste.
Mm-hmm.
Hold on.
Mm-hmm.
Issue. There we go. For some reason, I was logged in, but not logged in.
Oh, that's not wonderful.
So, there we go. When I tried to post in the chat, it's like, you need to log in. I'm like, but I'm already in.
It's like, you're not in enough.
So,
sorry.
It's Dungeon Brawl.
Okay.
28 days still to go. They've only raised $846 out of their $14,000 goal.
So it seems like it's probably relatively new anyway.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's very new. Basically, think of we would just think of like Red Dragon. The dungeon crawl just ended. You're still in the dungeon trying to figure out who gets what, and people start fighting over the loot. And you go and beat each other up over it.
Whee!
There's a small game board that you can move around on. You have 5 plastic standees. You have the basic classes. 5 pouch character stands. 1 6-sided die rule book. 35 status tokens. And there's a butt ton of cards. And basically there's a deck called the wound deck. Whenever you actually take damage, you take a card from the wound deck. When that deck runs out, the game's over and you calculate points. Wounds give you a -1. Treasures give you a bonus. There's also, weapons, armors, specialty cards, like ones like a spiked walls. You could place the spiked walls somewhere on the board, and if a player enters that square or stays in that square, they take damage.
Neat.
So, basic kind of little fighting game amongst people.
Cool.
And they have 3 stretch goals listed.
Mm-hmm.
One's for 16,000. You get 6 new character cards. 18,000 passive ability cards become mini tableaus.
Mm-hmm.
And 20,000 additional art for all characters.
All right. But, they've just started, so if you're interested in this one, you can either support them early, or you can just at least keep an eye on them to see if it's something that will actually get funded. Both are techniques people use when it comes to Kickstarters. So
Yeah, and to get a $40 pledge is what gets you the game.
okay. Orcish Librarian, do you have one that you want, or something you want to support, or you just want to digress it today?
I'm going to cheat a little bit and not a Kickstarter, but doubling back to where we were talking about earlier about the new sagas that are in Dominaria with the kind of unique vertical aspect ratio on the art pieces. From the moment those started getting spoiled, I know the thought that went through my head, and I suspect about a million other people's heads, was I really hope that the artists do like a large format textile print for these. Because with that aspect ratio and with the size that they're done at, and they're all of them so far universally beautiful, that would be a killer thing to have for like a large format textile print. And I know that Noah Bradley already has one out that I know he was promoting on his Twitter, and which I think is in his web store for the Benalia one that he did that has the stained glass look to it, which, if my memory serves me, I think is like a 60-inch tall canvas print. And I would be shocked if he is the last artist who will do one of these like super large format textile prints. So if you are a Magic fan, or there's one of those in your life, and you're like, what is a super cool thing I can get, and you have a sad bare wall somewhere in your house, I would keep an eye out for large format prints for the sagas.
Cool. All right. So for me, it's been a couple weeks. I had a couple I wanted to hit on. The one I want to hit on first, just for a basic suggestion to check it out, is because always been a big Psionics fan, and these group here, this group has been putting out a Psionics guide for Starfinder. They're the people that did Psionics for Pathfinder 2, which was always this is third-party stuff, but if you wanted to add it in, because they did Psionics back in D&D, cool. It is funded, so that's something to check out. The other one I kind of wanted to give a shout-out was, just a shout-out to more, is Dead in the West. It's about a third of the way funded. It is I will link this also, a Western RPG, but it's taking like a mythological Western. So it's like, all the Western movies and books and stuff about it that tell those like kind of like crazy Western stories, that's the kind of take they're doing at it, so it's like, Zorro, Lone Ranger, or the Stranger from what is the movie? I'm not thinking of the name. God. The one where the doo woo woo woo. Exactly. Where they have like standoff of the. I'm bad with movie names sometimes. Anyway.
Okay, Corral.
What's that?
No, I don't know the name of it.
Because isn't that like was that Clint Eastwood as like the Stranger?
I think so.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, Westerns. Yeah, it's very Western. As I said, it's a third of the way funded. 18 days to go. If you're a big fan of Westerns, which there's a lot of cool Western things out there, I would recommend checking out. But the one that I wanted to give a big support and talk most about today is Gears of Defiance. Because this is both a class struggle and steampunk. So, I mean, it's very interesting. So it is funded. It's almost it's reached over 150% of its goal. It's about revolution, kind of groups of characters banding together over oppression in a steampunk world. So that's kind of what it is. It's interesting because it has a lot of like narratives and tones we don't see in a lot of role-playing games for settings. The entire deal of like revolution going against oppression, it happens, but most of the times those are either like futuristic or modern settings that we see this. It's either like Big Brother kind of city-state kind of future / modern, and this is like like Las Miserable. Blah. God,
La Miserable.
Yes, I was trying to pronounce it really badly there for a
Les
second.
Miserables.
As soon as I started, I'm like, I'm butchering
You almost
this.
said Lost Miserables.
I know, I did. I was like, oh my god, what am I doing? Thank you.
Yeah, let the theater geek pronounce it for you.
Anyway, it's like got like inspirations for that. It's industrial steampunk background, and you're putting yourself in the shoe of like one of these Empire's secondhand citizens, basically, and fighting against the privilege to sort of get yourself into a better position. 200 pages, black and white book. Got character like archetypes and stuff. Their own kind of buildings for the system. Really interesting looking system. And you know, you kind of have a founder's session to set everything up. And the game takes place over actions and season phases. So it's definitely got a lot of interesting things going to it. Like action phases where you carry out plans, form plans, and season phases where the Empire reinforces their locations, increases threats, and tries to hunt you down. So that's kind of an interesting thing, that you like take actions as your sort of resistance characters, and then see how like this Empire goes against you afterwards. And it's a D6 system, so you're getting a dice pool of D6s. Yeah, it's cool. There is a quick start rules, but you have to be a backer to get it. So if you want to get the quick start rules, you could do the $1 backing if you just want to try it out at least, because that's an option always. You don't get like any of the big rewards, but as long as you're a backer, you can check out the quick start rules. You can see if you like it more, and then put in the full backing afterwards. So it's not a free quick start; it's a $1 quick start. Though for $10 you get the quick start, the PDF, and all the stretch goals. So, which hopefully they'll hit some stretch goals. Yeah, this one looks like a very interesting one that might be cool to check out. So, Gears of Defiance is up now. All right, let's move on to our second to last segment, which is our week in tabletop, or in Joe and I cases, our weeks, and Orcish Librarian, our week. So, Orcish Librarian, how about your week in tabletop, since you've only had 1 week and we've had 2?
Oh my goodness. I have like gotten nothing. I'm so busy trying to get prepared to go out to Grand Prix Seattle next week. I haven't done anything.
I saw that was next week. I was like wondering what week it was because I wasn't paying attention to that, and I just saw it was next week the other day, and I'm like, wow.
From the state of my panic packing, I can tell you that it is next week. So.
Mm-hmm. It seems like it will be a big one.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to it.
Mm-hmm. Can some of those West Coast people come out this way? I'd show up at an event then.
I know.
Mm-hmm. I can like afford to fly out like once every other year somewhere. So if it's in driving distance of like even 6 hours, we might have a deal.
Yeah.
You know? Head this way, guys. Come on. Visit the East Coast. We're nice here.
Are we? Are we really?
Probably. We have some nice stuff. Food.
Cheesesteaks?
Cheesesteaks, pizza, and chowder. There we go.
You're not saying it right.
Chowder?
Chowder.
Mm. Yes, The Simpsons. Yes, we know. That's infamous. That's infamous, but probably no one remembers it because it's a couple of like decades ago now. Because The Simpsons been on forever.
Chowder. Chowder. Say chowder.
Okay, so our week in tabletop, Joe. What have we been doing over the past 2 weeks?
Not a heck of a lot since last Monday got canceled.
Let's hear. What got canceled this week? My best got canceled.
We didn't get to do tabletop last week.
No.
We didn't get to do, discussing tabletop last week, and we didn't get to do our Monday stream of board games.
I mean, if we go back 2 weeks, we finished
one
up Time Stories.
which we did. No, 2 weeks was Forbidden Desert.
Oh, that's right. It was Forbidden Desert. So 2 weeks ago,
Which we lost one horribly and won the second one very well.
Yes. And then I did, on the Sunday before that, I did Ticket to Ride with some folks on stream. So both of those are not up yet because I'm bad. And
That I would have played. Dang it.
it was a little later on Sunday, so it was like too late for you, unfortunately. It ended up being. We just did basic Ticket to Ride. I'm trying to start at 8 o'clock, so if you want to join at 8 o'clock for like an hour on a Sunday sometime, I can let you know.
Maybe.
Okay.
Walking Dead's at 9, so it's like...
And that's what I have a DVR for. Anyway.
I have a DVR too, but I like to watch it when it comes on.
So within those 2 weeks, I've role-played twice, both in the same week, which was last week. I did Bastion Frontier, in which we beat up some kobolds because they stole some of our stuff. Not mine, because I put all my stuff in a handy haversack. Because I'm the one carrying it. So everyone else got some stuff stolen, so I just helped them beat up the kobolds. And then I had a Bessem short shot, which was Cowboy Bebop, but which we managed to not finish in one session, even though I planned it for one session. So the only reason we didn't have it this week is because Tiv had to cancel, and I'm technically only halfway prepared because I know what's going to happen, but I'm not sure it's a full session. Because again, they turned a one-session plan, which I was hoping to resolve in like half an hour, which they're like, oh, we're not going to resolve it that soon. So we ended with 2.5 hours, so now I have to like stretch a half an hour to like at least an hour and a half, and I'm like...
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm going to.
Let's see. Real World, we did... what is it? Something Gnome Street.
Yes.
There's a number. I forget the name of it.
Yeah, like 64 Gnome Street. It's like supposed to be Jump Street. It's
Yeah.
Gnome Street. We did that the 1 week along with your Shattering game.
That's with the flicking game. Because if you tie for who goes first, you have to flick your token onto the board.
That was an interesting game, but kind of weird.
Well, we also were playing it wrong.
Yes, we were playing it wrong. And we did the Shattering game that week, and then
we
this last
started
week.
to play it and didn't finish it. Last week we played a full game of it.
Yes.
Which was pretty fun. It's a dice card game. Pretty simple, and you're trying to make 30 new yen before anyone else.
And it's gambling mechanics. You have to use up the dice. So it's something like Farkle or Yahtzee, where you have to match all the dice, and then you can roll them all again, kind of thing. And you have to keep kind of like pressing your luck.
Yeah, it's Farkle-esque.
Yeah, and then we also did Takanoko, the
Panda gardening game.
Where you are either growing stuff in a garden or having a panda eat it in a garden.
Yes. Which you and I both won. Hana came close a few times.
Yeah, she did pretty good. She was learning, though. There's a little bit of a learning curve, so, getting a hold of it.
Just like the first game we ran of it, we didn't go back through the rules and we forgot one important thing with the gardener.
Yeah, he grew everything around him, so...
Not just the square you move him to.
Just saying.
Why isn't this garden growing very well?
No, because we just did it completely wrong. So yes, we had some interesting week in tabletop, and this week... That was last week, mostly, though. This week has been, like, dead. So I'm hoping to play some tonight or something. And maybe Monday, because I don't think I'll be doing tomorrow tabletop. I'll probably do something else because it's Easter, and I know I'm going to be free by the evening. So I'll just do, like, an evening stream, because I'm not going to be doing my morning one of something. I don't know what yet.
You know what? I lied. I've got one I want to talk about.
Hey.
There's a Night in the Woods is a independently developed video game that I think has been out for about a year now, but somehow it was not on my radar. Last week was GDC. It won a bunch of awards out of GDC, and I downloaded it, played it through, and it's a beautiful, wonderful game, which I recommend to everybody. Yes. It has a wonderful, unique art style. It's beautifully written. It's difficult to describe. It's like there's a little bit of Twin Peaks in there. There's a little bit of The Graduate in there. There's a little bit of, just kind of like very, for a game that's about anthropomorphic talking animals, very kind of trenchant, very topical, very relevant social commentary about,
Yeah.
urban suburban decline in contemporary America.
And psychological problems.
Yeah, mental health, everything. And it's remarkable in that it manages the trick that some pieces of really good media do, where on the one hand it's deeply surrealistic, but on the other hand it's also very, very real. Yeah. And it's a short game. It's on, I think, every platform at this point, and I super recommend it to people.
Yeah, I actually was planning on finally finishing that on stream on Monday because I got down to like, I know there's like only like a half an hour left, so it's like I don't have a good point in time to throw to stream anymore. So I've got 2 games which are like really right at the end. I'm gonna do them both on Monday. It's my big like finish a couple of games day. But no, every time that because you're playing as a cat, and every time I see a cat that's an actual cat on the street, and I'm like, but I'm a cat person, and there's a cat there, this doesn't, what? Or there's the raccoon, and there's like a raccoon person, and I'm like, gah.
Yeah.
But anyway, yes, I agree with you. Night in the Woods is great. I do recommend it. It's an experience, and there's a lot of different options, so there's a lot of ridiculous things to do. And I was surprised because I'd seen someone play through, and I was playing through, and I came across stuff they didn't find that I didn't even know was in the game. And it was so amazing, that I could do that and like just come across different things that were just hidden there. So much. Anyway, okay. Ask the Table, I think, or Consult the Table. Our last segment, where this is the segment where if you are in chat and or you contact us in one of the billion ways I'm going to list, you can ask us a question. Any kind of question about anything from tabletop to just something nerdy in general to, I don't know, you want a topic, you want to ask us a question about it, knock yourself out. We'll do our best to answer it here on the table. And I don't think we have anything this week, though, because we get some probably every couple of weeks. And not this week, though. Unless you're in chat and you want to ask a question quickly. Or you as a guest have some kind of interesting question to ask.
I can ask the table next to me, but I don't think it's going to answer.
Are you consulting the table, though?
Excuse me, table. Do you have any questions? It just stared blankly.
Anyway, you can reach Joe, me, or Worm, who's normally here on our Twitters to check with us. Worm and I have Discords you can check in with us. You can email us at discussingtabletop@yahoo.com. You can put it in the the chat here when you're showing up live at all. You can put it into the messages. I'm losing my mind. YouTube comments. God. YouTube comments when I put this up on YouTube, which should theoretically be sometime in the middle of next week. As if you're checking out my YouTube side, I've been doing a lot of video and channel updates. So,
and if you're stalking them and seeing them on the street, ask them the question as well.
Yeah, just kind of walk up and be like, "Hey, how was this question?" I'll be like, "Who are you? What do you want? How do you know me? Wait, I'm famous to like a degree." I mean, like when someone recognizes me anywhere, it's like which has happened once. I'll take it. And my channel is much smaller, so I'll take my, like, one of those 800 people that subscribes to my channel. If you recognize me out there, knock yourself out, say hi.
Well, don't knock yourself out. That might be painful.
Anyway, thank you, everyone. Why don't we end the show after that comment? Thank you, everyone who's joined us. Thank you to my 2 guests. Of course, Joe, our regular, Orcish Librarian, our sort of friend of the show, occasional guest when we're talking about some very interesting magic-based stuff.
Strictly irregular.
Yeah, irregular. Yes. Our irregular guest, Orcish Librarian, where can people find you? What you can say about you? I don't know what I'm pointing anymore.
All of those things that you guys have, I don't have any of them. You can find me on Twitter, or if you're not on Twitter, leave a message at the Lost and Found counter at the Greyhound bus station in Saugatuck, Michigan, and it will find its way to me through some unique property of the universe that I don't rightly understand. Those are your two choices. So
I really want to see
Twitter is probably easier, but Saugatuck is beautiful this time of year. So
I really
take your
want to
choice.
see that work now. Saugatuck. Joe, how about you?
I promote you as always.
You do. You really promote me as always. That's true.
Pimp my GM.
Woo, woo. As usual, I am Tantus Naravan Dracovin, your host and Emperor. You can find me here daily. Mornings mostly, evenings a lot of times, so I stream a heck of a lot. You can find me there. You can find me on my YouTube, which is going to be scripted content and some edited VODs when I start editing them. I'm basically going to take a lot of my VODs and just edit them down into, highlight shows and throw them up. And I've been getting rid of a lot of the old ones, which are just full unedited content because it's terrible. It's terrible. It's like I'm putting hours of content that no one really wants to see. If I give you like 20 minutes of great highlights over an entire series, probably people want to see that a lot more. Just gonna say that. Highlights. You'll expect them soon. What else? You can always find me in Discord, Twitter. Always subscribe here for best report, Patreon for extra support and some great rewards. I think that's everything. All links are down below. We'll be back next week, at least me and Joe. Hopefully, once again, in the future, Orcish Librarian, you can join us. Hopefully, Worm will be back next week, so we're back to the original trifecta, and we can get, back on action for next week's episode, because there's probably plenty of more interesting and cool tabletop topics to discuss over the coming weeks. We got a bunch of stuff for Magic and a bunch of stuff for other stuff, So, cool. Anyway, thank you everyone who joined us. Thank you for those of you who joined us live. Thank you who's going to check us out on YouTube. We'll hopefully all see you in the future, and have a great day. Great Easter, because it's that weekend, if that's what you celebrate. At least a great vacation, if that's what it's giving you. And have a great day. So bye-bye, everyone!
Bye!